It's our First NBC Bank weekend preview brought to you by First NBC Bank. 35 locations throughout Louisiana and into the Florida Panhandle. That's First NBC Bank, proud sponsor of SportsNOLA.com. Lenny Vangilder on this side of the aisle this week. Jude Young in for Ken Trahan, who is on assignment today. Will be back with us on Monday. Jude, let's start with basketball. Obviously, a lot going on in the NBA, but we finally get to see something on the court Friday night as the Pelicans open the NBA Summer League Friday night. What do you look for in terms of Summer League action other than the obvious in the terms of the draft picks and what you might see out of Buddy Hield and Cheick Diallo making their professional debuts?
I expect Buddy Hield to play exceptionally well. I expect him to star like he did at Oklahoma. We're not going to know about what kind of player he's going to be where it matters in the NBA till he plays in those games. But everybody else, they're fighting for roster spots. They're fighting to show that they belong, including Diallo, who is still a second-round pick. They traded 2 second-rounders to get him, but he still needs to prove that he's not that far away from contributing, even though they know he's raw for a 19-year-old. Everybody else there has to believe they have a legitimate opportunity to make the roster. And Renee Nadeau of SportsNOLA has an article about some guys to watch. One that he mentions is Cat Barber, the point guard out of North Carolina State. A little surprising that he wasn't drafted this year. ACC Player of the Year, the type of guy that may have the ability to make it in the league. When you look at the Pelicans roster right now, knowing there may be more moves to come, there may be an opening for that third point guard position. They would like to keep Tim Frazier. They may not be able to afford to. He came on last year as a guy off the street. That gives people like Cat Barber and many players on that Vegas roster the belief that they have an opportunity to make it with the Pels too.
Yeah, and even if it's not in July, you're putting some things on film, maybe getting yourself a camp invite, maybe getting yourself a chance to earn a D-League spot that could turn into something down the road. This is obviously an evolving process. The other evolving process, of course, is the Pelicans roster. The one bit of news this week that the Pelicans and Langston Galloway have agreed to a deal. Galloway, a Baton Rouge native with a chance to come home after he was not going to have a future with the New York Knicks.
A Christian Life graduate who won a state championship there and went to St. Joe's. Another 4-year college player. That seems to be against the NBA trend, but a direction that the Pelicans continue to go this offseason, whether it's free agents who are established in the league that they've signed or the draft pick, the #1 pick when we talk about Hield. I love the signing of Galloway. I think it's the one of the 3 that's going to prove to be the biggest bargain. A little bit over $5 million this year. He'll probably opt out next year because I think he's going to play well. A two-way player, whether you talk about Etwan Moore or Solomon Hill, Galloway fits in as well. Effort, 94 feet every night. You're going to get that out of this guy, and I think Dell Demps needs to be commended about what he's done in free agency so far. He can attract stars, but he seems to be attracting the right kind of guy that I think the fans are going to enjoy watching play.
Yeah, and look, this is not over by any means in terms of what we may see. There are some other moves, and the thing to remember is this: obviously the cap has grown, but the floor has grown as well. So everybody has to spend in the neighborhood of $85 million this year. And you're going to have teams when all of this free agency shakes out that have got to find a way to get up to that number, which is going to make somebody like a Tyreke Evans in his expiring contract attractive to someone in a trade.
And you have to believe the Pelicans continue to shop Evans, and they'll have their opportunity at some point. The latest rumor we heard is when Dwayne Wade decided to leave the Miami Heat for the Chicago Bulls, that the Heat were suddenly looking for a playmaker with the ball in his hands. I guess you could call Tyreke Evans a poor man's or worse Dwayne Wade. That may be an opportunity for him. That may be an opportunity, more importantly, for the Pelicans to be able to get somebody off the roster who is a bit of a black hole with the ball offensively, doesn't give effort all the time like you'd like to see defensively, and doesn't fit into what head coach Alvin Gentry is trying to do.
Shifting gears, college baseball, Tulane continuing its search for a new head coach. Andy Cannizaro, Matt Reiser, the 2 former Tulane players, reportedly getting interviews middle of the week. Travis Jewett, the assistant at Vanderbilt, getting an interview. And the wild card, if you will, in this mix is the head coach at UCSB, and Andrew Checketts, who took his team to Omaha this year, has a very attractive resume. And if he's truly in the mix for this job, I think he's got to go to the top of the list. Your thoughts on the Tulane search?
I completely agree with that. Although there is a great attraction to two viable candidates right in the state that are alums, that did help your program win, that have great reputations locally. At the same time, you're Tulane and you have national aspirations. That's the program at Tulane that you think about as having the opportunity to win a national championship. And you have a guy who's done a wonderful job at a floundering program that doesn't have a lot of resources on the West Coast and Checkets, building them into a consistent winner in a short amount of time and bringing them to Omaha this past year. That's awfully attractive if you're Troy Dannon and you're thinking about being a big-time program. Not that Cannizzaro and Reiser don't stand out as candidates who are certainly up and coming in the game and have skins on the wall with what they've done in their careers. But if you're a Tulane fan, you have to be excited that somebody like Checkets is interested and sees Tulane as a step up from a program that is on solid ground and was in Omaha.
Two things to remember in this process. One, I think it's key that someone has private school experience in terms of being a coach, which Checkets does not. Okay, so obviously he's accomplished a lot, is a very talented coach, and is a fast riser in this profession, but he does not have experience at a private school, which, again, baseball, as we've explained ad nauseum, is a little bit different than how the other sports operate in trying to get to that 11.7 scholarships for a 35-man roster. That in my mind is big. And, the other thing is this, and again, Troy Dannon's new to Tulane, but Tulane hasn't hired a Tulane guy for a major head coaching job in a long, long time. So, if Cannizzaro or Reiser end up with this job, you're talking about something of really historic proportions as far as Tulane's concerned.
A program as significant as baseball that has a winning history is the program where it would make sense to hire a Tulane person. But you mentioned having experience in a private school program. Cannizzaro and Reiser have experience playing for one, but they don't have experience coaching one or running one. So if you're Troy Dannon, you're keeping that in mind when you're looking at all these candidates, and that makes Paul Jewett somebody that is a legitimate guy who, when you can do it at Vanderbilt, a similar type of school, although they have advantages Tulane doesn't have as far as scholarship money that comes from the academic side. He is at least somebody who understands that kind of culture.
Yeah, and don't forget this as well. We're talking about head coaches. Part of the process, I'm sure, is finding out who the prospective head coach would bring in as an assistant, because that may help address the situation. One other baseball note, local interest, American Legion Southeast Regional gets underway Saturday at Kirsch Rooney as the Legion season moves into the playoff phase, the state tournament after that, and then the regional tournament. The one state team that advances goes on with a chance to possibly reach North Carolina and the American Legion World Series. So we'll certainly be following that. Always a lot of interest in area baseball.
And always, when you talk about American Legion, an opportunity for a team to make a big run. It's not uncommon for teams from the metro area to get all the way to the American Legion World Series, which is on ESPN3, so people can watch those games and have an opportunity there to play for a championship. It's happened before, and you never know any given season. There's plenty of talent and great coaching, as we've seen locally in baseball for so many years.
We look forward to that. Jude, thanks for being in. We will see you soon.
Absolutely.
That's our First NBC Bank weekend preview, brought to you by First NBC Bank. 35 locations throughout Southeast Louisiana and on into the Florida Panhandle. That's Jude. I'm Lenny. We will see you back early next week with Ken to recap the weekend. Thanks for joining us.